बार एग्जाम दे रहे हैं और रिजल्ट नहीं आ रहा है और इतना अच्छा स्कोर नहीं आ रहा है, स्पीकिंग में बार बार फेल हो रहे हैं, जो सबसे ईजी सेक्शन है, क्या करें, कैसे करें? बार बार एग्जाम देने के बाद भी स्कोर नहीं आ रहा है, किस तरह से बोले? कोई कह रहा है बड़ा तेज़ बोलना है, कोई कह रहा है कि आराम से बोलना है, कोई कह रहा है कि चीख के बोलना है, कोई कह रहा है धीमे से बोलना है। तो आप बिल्कुल परेशान हो चुके हैं, अलग अलग तरीके से आपने एग्जाम दे दिए हैं और अभी आपका रिजल्ट नहीं आ रहा है। जस्ट मैसेज मी, आई जस्ट गिव यू टिप फॉर दैट, जस्ट सेंड मी योर ऑडियो, दैट्स अ स्पेशल ऑफर फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू। मुझे अपनी ऑडियो भेजिए, आई जस्ट चेक आउट योर ऑडियो ऑनलाइन एंड जस्ट गिव द इवैल्यूएशन ऑन द बिहाफ ऑफ टू यू। So I'll just tell you कि कितना टाइम आपको लगने वाला है and how many factors and the sectors you have to work for. So every time I'm just ready for you. If you want to get a valid score in your PTE, just call me and just message me anytime. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Which may be none, according to a study in the Drug and Therapeutics Bulletin. Researchers reviewed the literature on a variety of treatments. Topical antihistamines, generally not recommended. They're only marginally effective and shouldn't be used for longer than 3 days. Oral analgesics like ibuprofen are sometimes recommended, but the scientists say there's no evidence supporting that. Topical anesthetics such as lidocaine are only marginally effective and can sensitize the skin, meaning the itching could ultimately get worse. And common topical steroids like hydrocortisone, the problem here is that they're not supposed to be used on broken skin, and if you've been scratching, that skin may already be broken. The authors recommend a simple approach: clean the area and use a cold pack to tamp down inflammation and numb the nerves. If you haven't broken the skin, try the steroid cream. But your best approach may be ice. The cold hard fact is that this cold hard treatment works.
If you have paraskevideckatriophobia, today is not your day. That's right, paraskevideckatriophobia is fear of Friday the 13th and the accidents, mishaps, and misfortunes thought by some to occur on that day. But is there anything really to fear? In fact, a study was conducted and published back in 1993 in the British Medical Journal that looked at hospital admissions due to accidents on one Friday the 13th compared with the previous Friday the 6th. The researchers tracked traffic on a highway in one part of England and found that many fewer cars were on the road on the 13th, perhaps due to people being leery of driving on that day, but hospital admissions in that area due to traffic accidents were actually higher. 45 people were admitted on the 6th, but 65 people were admitted on the 13th. The researchers concluded that a few people were indeed unlucky on that Friday the 13th in that part of England. Then again, what you really needed for this study was a control group that stays home, only to slip in the bathtub.
It's tough to pick a familiar face out of a crowd, but focusing on a known voice in a noisy room is easy. And a new study scanned volunteers' brains to look at how we solve the so-called cocktail party problem. The work is in the journal Nature. Researchers recorded the activity of the subjects' cerebral cortexes while playing them sentences spoken by different voices. First, the subjects listened to individual sentences and reported key features of each one.
If you were driving in 1981, your car probably
Then they
had
heard two
lousy
different
mileage.
sentences played at the same time,
If you
Dengue
were
infection
driving in
flipped a switch on
1981, your car
140
but
probably
had to
had
listen
lousy
to and
mileage.
recall details from only one voice. Each voice drew a particular response from the auditory cortex, and even with an extra sentence playing simultaneously, researchers saw that the cortex responded specifically to the voice that the subject was focusing on. This finding indicates that our brains process sound based not only on the audio input they receive, but also on our listening goals, and it could lead to speech recognition systems that are accurate in crowds, even at a cocktail party.
Tens of millions of sharks are killed for their fins each year. It's not just a tragic abuse of the animals, it's bad business.
They're basically swimming dollar signs, whether you're trying to kill them for their meat or their fins, or you're interested in looking at them for ecotourism.
That's Austin Gallagher, a doctoral student at the University of Miami. I spoke with him on February 26th.
And we did some calculations, and the results were remarkable. We determined that the average shark was worth about $200,000 over the course of its life. And when you compare it to finning that animal, a one-time extractive use, seeing it for diving is worth about 40% more.
Gallagher and his doctoral advisor Neil Hammerschlag published the study last year in Current Issues in Tourism.
And since this paper came out, I got an email from somebody in Bali just a few weeks ago saying, we're using your paper to stop illegal harvest of thresher sharks in Bali at a local dive community.
Obese people have higher risks for diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, and injuries in car accidents? Yes, in part because they're far less likely to wear a seatbelt. That's the finding of a study out of the University of Buffalo that'll be presented at an upcoming meeting of the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine in Chicago. The researchers analyzed data in the National Fatality Analysis Reporting System of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. The study included 1/3 of a million drivers involved in fatal crashes. 2 years ago, the research group found that morbidly obese people were 56% more likely to die in a car crash than normal weight car occupants. The new study revealed that drivers of normal weight are 67% more likely to wear a seatbelt than are obese drivers, which could account for at least part of the increased death risk. The researchers hypothesized that overweight people find belts uncomfortable and difficult to buckle. A weight loss program can address the problem in the long run. An inexpensive seatbelt extension can solve it today.
Does your puppy turn his nose up at his own chow because he wants some of whatever it is that you're having? A new study finds that when it comes to food, dogs recognize human social signals about what's good. The work is in the journal Public Library of Science 1. Researchers let pet dogs choose between two plates, one with a single piece of food and the other with 6 pieces. Unsurprisingly, the animals generally went for the larger portion, but when a human being showed a clear liking for the smaller plate, the canines likewise went for the skimpier choice. The dogs apparently recognized and responded to the human's social cues. And not all cues were equally effective. When the human approached but did not touch the smaller portion, dogs ignored the attention-drawing gesture. For a social signal to influence behavior, it had to demonstrate intention. And the most effective cues also involved communication, such as looking from the food to the dog and back while talking encouragingly. For dogs, choosing a bite may depend on another's bark. One family generally dines on Chinese takeout while their neighbors eat home-cooked meatloaf. You say potato, I say potato. And humans aren't the only primate species with cultural differences. Even in the same environment, different groups of chimpanzees use different tools. The work is in Current Biology. Chimps living in a national park in Côte d'Ivoire like eating kula nuts. They hammer them open with stone or wood. At the beginning of the season, the nutshells are harder, so you might expect all the chimps in the forest to initially use stone hammers and then switch to easy-to-find wooden tools when the nut cracking requires less force. But researchers examined the tool use of 3 different chimpanzee communities and found that despite sharing genes and a habitat, each group chose their hammers differently. For example, one group preferred stone hammers throughout the kula nut season. Another gradually transitioned from primarily stone to primarily wooden tools, and the third community switched from stone to wood more quickly. Hammer size also varied from group to group. As a chimp might explain, you say tomato, I say...
If you've ever spent time watching chimps at the zoo, you've probably wondered, what are they thinking? Well, the answer might be simple. Could be they're fixing to hurl a rock at your head. One chimp in Sweden actually hides stones and other potential projectiles and then acts casual before chucking them at visitors, behavior that suggests an unprecedented degree of primate planning and deception. His duplicity is described in the journal Public Library of Science 1. The chimp, named Santino, had long been known to fling things at annoying onlookers. For years, he's calmly gathered stones and chunks of concrete, stacking them in piles, which he visits when some human particularly irks him. But lately Santino's gotten more cunning. For one, he's taken to concealing his arsenal beneath little heaps of hay that he carries out from his enclosure. And his attacks are also more stealthy. Santino used to pitch a fit before pitching a stone, but now he acts all nonchalant, even thoughtfully munching an apple before letting the missiles fly. The researchers say the data show that chimps are capable of social planning and deception. Unless, of course, that's just what the chimps want us to think. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hupp.
Now's a great time to break out that backyard telescope, because Saturday, March 3rd is the Mars opposition. It's one of the times that the Earth and Mars pass the closest to one another. The name, the Mars opposition, means that Mars and the Sun are on, well, opposite sides of us. And it happens only once every 2 years and 2 months. But if you don't have such equipment handy, you might want to head over to the online SLU Space Camera. It's usually a members-only site that allows users to look at web images broadcast from telescopes around the world and to click to snap photos. The pictures get integrated into Google Earth Sky. The site also offers free weekly space shows. But Saturday, there will be a free live streaming of the Mars opposition hosted by astronomy experts. It'll include views of the planet from a variety of observatories, including those in Arizona and the Canary Islands. You'll be able to pick out surface features such as canyons, volcanoes, and polar caps. The online broadcast will begin on Saturday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Head over to the online SLU Space Camera. Here's a tale of genes, smells, and pigs. Most people have 2 copies of a gene that enables them to detect a steroidal pheromone called androstenone, which is found in male mammals, particularly porkers. But most pigs in developed countries have been chemically castrated, which means much less androstenone in the meat, so no strong smell. Now Europe is considering a ban on castration. Might pork from these intact males smell bad to people with the right genes? Researchers recruited 23 volunteers who were screened for the ability to smell androstenone. Tests showed that those who were sensitive to the compound did indeed have 2 copies of the gene, and those who didn't notice it or didn't think it smelled bad mostly had 1 or no copies. The researchers then challenged the subjects with pork to which androstenone was added to match levels that would be found in meat from uncastrated males, and the sensitive subjects thought the meat smelled and tasted much worse than did the insensitive tasters. The research was published in Public Library of Science 1. The scientists say ending pig castration could thus make some pork unpalatable to people with the common genes construct, which might make consumers squeal.
Sound and touch may seem completely separate, except possibly when playing the game Operation. But it turns out that the 2 senses are actually quite entwined. A new study finds that people with hearing issues often also have problems with touch. Researchers compared sets of twins, some identical and some fraternal. The identical twins obviously have the same genome, and thus the same mutations. The fraternal twins have genetic differences. Other subjects in the study were congenitally deaf. To determine how acute their hearing was, the subjects reported whether they could hear various high frequencies. To evaluate touch, they were asked to differentiate different surfaces with their fingertips. The research revealed that touch sensitivity was highly heritable and connected closely with hearing ability. The better the twins could sense touch, the better they could hear, and vice versa. 1 in 5 subjects that had congenital deafness also had a poor sense of touch. The research is in the journal Public Library of Science Biology. Next, the researchers want to figure out which genes are faulty. After all, addressing the problem could kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Have you ever wanted to turn down the volume at a deafening concert or noisy bar? Envy the whale. A new study finds that toothed whales can reduce their own auditory sensitivity when they expect a loud sound. The work is presented at this week's Acoustics 2012 meeting. Whales and dolphins rely on their responsive hearing to interpret returning echolocation clicks. Previous research suggested that these marine mammals could dull their hearing before uttering outgoing echolocation clicks, which are very loud. Could they use the same coping mechanism for external noises? To find out, researchers trained a false killer whale that a loud noise would always follow a brief warning signal. Then, they attached suction cup sensors to the outside of the whale's head and played the signal. The sensors measured brainwaves that indicated the whale did reduce its hearing sensitivity in expectation of a clamor. The researchers hope to test other species as well. Loud noises from ships can disturb whales. To accommodate marine life, perhaps vessels could emit signals before making a ruckus, warning whales to tune us out. Thanks for the minute. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Sophie Bushwick.
For a company that made its name by building one of the world's most popular social networks, Facebook itself often comes across as, well, antisocial. Facebook is invaluable as a forum for finding long-lost friends, not to mention sharing links, photos, and personal videos. For better and worse, the site has even redefined the word like. Of course, Facebook manages to use all of this goodwill to its own advantage, and the company often needs to be reminded that there are limits to how much it can exploit user information for profit. Facebook has settled a class action lawsuit that forces it to be more clear that clicking on the like button means your name and photo can be used to endorse whatever movie, product, or politician you liked. Most recently, Facebook surreptitiously modified user profiles to replace their original email addresses with @facebook.com addresses. Mail sent to that address becomes a Facebook message to a user. You'd think that a company with so many loyal followers would have announced this ahead of time. That's a definite dislike.
I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Jack Nicholson playing the crazed caretaker in The Shining makes me reach for a blanket. Now, a study finds that people we think are, well, creepy, can actually make us feel colder. The research will be published in the journal Psychological Science. Researchers interviewed 40 college undergraduates. During each interaction, the experimenter was either chummy with the student or very stiff and professional. The investigator also alternated between mimicking students' posture, a signal of rapport, and not doing anything at all. Participants then completed a questionnaire designed to find out how hot or cold they felt. The results showed that the subjects actually felt colder when the investigator acted inappropriately or sent mixed signals. The researchers conjecture that because the brain tries to interpret social cues and purely physical ones simultaneously, people unconsciously associate icy stares and chilly interactions with actual physical coldness. So the next time you have to visit your doctor with the creepy receptionist, bring a sweater.
Every year, about 10 million tons of paper winds up in American landfills and incinerators, which is not only wasteful, but adds CO2 to the atmosphere. Recycling helps, but even that material has to be repulped and paperized before you can use it to print out that recipe you'll never make. But what if you could wipe the page clean and use it again? Light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation to the rescue. A new study shows that laser light can erase the toner from a piece of printed paper. The approach appears in the Proceedings of the Royal Society A. Taking a page from the Art Restoration Handbook, scientists sampled a variety of light sources to see if any could be used to strip the ink from laser-printed documents without damaging or discoloring the paper. UV and infrared were too harsh, but a bright green laser, applied in 4 nanosecond pulses, vaporizes the print, leaving paper that looks as good as new. Such unprinters will probably run about $30,000, so they probably won't catch on for home use. But people in the recycling world might find that the green laser fits the bill for making paper that's really green.